And it's not just anecdotal. Don't just take things at face value. And I hope that a lot of the coaches that are out there stop telling people that relationships are hard. Words have meaning. Words have power.
Yeah.
Words have energy. And every time that people tell you that relationships are hard, you then think relationships are hard. Then you believe that relationships are hard. Then you tell yourself that, and then your actions sync up with that, and you self-sabotage and do a bunch of things that make the relationship hard.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Introspect Club. My name is Jeff Damisse, and I'm your host. Now, a lot of things has happened this week. I'm sipping a little bit. Water, I promise, Mom. See, I'm not an alcoholic. See? I've been touring social media for a little bit, just for fun, I promise. But I came across a lot of people, a lot of professionals who are there to aid people in coaching their love lives. Everyone seems to have an advice nowadays, including myself, but I never claimed to be a professional. I do that purposely because I'm not an accredited individual that is in this space. I'm very fascinated by the science of it. And I want to make sure everyone fully understands and is fully aware of how they are sharing information online, as well as who they're talking to. And in order to better aid us in this particular topic, I want to bring a very special guest of mine. Okay. This person is a science-based relationship coach. And I like science. I'm a little bit of a nerd. Okay. So I want everybody to give a nice welcome to Arlene Washburn. Welcome to the stage. Welcome to the podcast. How you doing, love?
I'm doing great. Super excited to talk to you, Jeff.
Yeah. I like that. You're very relaxed right now. I feel like you're like in one of those like Japanese films based on what's going on in the background. I feel like somebody's going to come through and like chop up the background. You're going to whip out a little sword and just start slicing people up. Is that weird? Is that me?
No, that's intentional. My husband calls it the palace.
The palace. Why is it the palace?
Because he built this room for me. You know, it's like a bonus room over the garage that we converted into my closet. And so I spent a lot of time in here because it's a huge room. And he's like, "You're going up to the palace?"
So, ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, she has a couch in her closet. So if you're in New York City, you think you have a walk-in closet, try putting a couch in there. Apparently that's not a thing. So give a little quick introduction to yourself, and then I want to get into the topic at hand because I feel like you'll be able to help me understand this a little bit better.
Yeah, so I am a science-based dating and relationship coach and a matchmaker. I've been a matchmaker for many years. And at one point, I actually was the CEO of the only state licensed school for matchmaking in the country.
Okay.
It was accredited by the state of New York. And so in that capacity, I taught hundreds of matchmakers all over the world. I've traveled to China, Japan, Europe, the Caribbean, and, you know, just a lot of people also online that I've taught through video about matchmaking. And it's a huge industry. But the thing that I'm most connected to is the coaching side of things, because I feel like matchmaking is like kind of bringing you a fish.
Yeah.
And coaching is like teaching you how to fish and then how to cook the fish.
Oh, is that right? So you're a chef.
Definitely.
So you're a relationship chef.
Exactly.
Is that what it is? You like to cook up relationships. All right. Hopefully they're not too salty at the end. Get it? That was just...
Well, you know what I find, Jeff, that a lot of people spend a lot of time and energy and money on how to meet the person.
Okay.
But then they don't know anything about how to be in a relationship. So you then you attract the right person even potentially, but then you mess it up. You self-sabotage because you're not as adept at relationships. You don't really know how to be in a relationship, and there's a lot of skills to it.
Yeah, but there's a lot of skills, but there's a lot of scams to it too. Here's what I mean, right?
Yeah.
So part of the reason why a lot of people suck at this is a lot of people get their information in the wrong place. In the past, a lot of the wrong information, in my opinion, are like in these foo-foo magazines that, 10 things a guy likes, 10 things. The list is not that long. And there's also like, information now being fed online with all these gurus, right? And no offense to you, you sound very intelligent. You sound like you know what you're doing, but what keeps myself or anybody else from identifying you or anybody that I might come across online as, someone who is an imposter of the space because they happen to have a microphone or they happen to have followers? Like, how do you differentiate in that world?
That is such a great question. And it's something that you can ask about anything right now, because we're in the misinformation era in this country, in particular in the US and throughout. It's been an ongoing campaign around the world, right? Just feeding misinformation. Here's how I differentiate myself.
Okay.
Well, first of all, you and I have had conversations in the past. So I spent 20 years in the pharmaceutical industry.
Okay.
I'm not proud of it. But the one thing that I did learn in pharma is evidence-based, research-based, science-based information. Got it. Gathering information that's going to that's proven, that's been recreated over and over again to come to a result. Right.
Okay.
So I'm a big seeker of this type of information. That's one. I've been certified in the past as a coach and as a matchmaker.
Okay.
There are certifications for this. But the thing that I want to say that I learned the most when in my previous industry is the continuing education, right? Like when you're, in pharma, if you're a doctor, whatever, you have continuing education credits, meaning that you're constantly getting new information, the latest and greatest information. Well, I've imposed that on myself. And so I'm constantly reading books, looking at research, looking at the science. And then the most important thing is that I incorporate what I learn into action, meaning I have a wonderful, successful marriage of many years. And I don't say that to brag because I've had the opposite, right? I was
Sounds
married
like
before.
bragging rights to me. How long you been married?
I've been with my husband for 10 years, and I was in a marriage for 17 years before that didn't quite work out. So I've been on both ends. So it's not like, I've been here forever. No, I know the dark side and I know the other side, right?
Let's talk about the dark side real quick. Let's talk about the dark side because, like, oftentimes, at least the saying goes, your second marriage is going to have a tougher time sustaining than your first marriage, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you're in a very unique situation right now, right? You had a previous marriage that right now had a longer length than your current marriage, okay? And you're also a science-based relationship coach, right? Going into these two different relationships, and I'm assuming you've learned a lot from your previous one, and you're learning a lot from your current one, right?
Right.
So, what's the dark side of relationships that you experience or learn from that kind of led you to, I would hope, a better place where you're at now?
I love that question. And I'm so happy to answer that, right? Because people think, well, you were in this marriage for almost 17 years. Yes. But what were the conditions for being in that marriage?
Okay.
A lot of it was external. For example, you don't want to be another statistic, Latina or woman of color or whatever, getting divorced. So hang in there. Don't air out your dirty laundry. Keep all the bad things to yourself and then just kind of tough it out and hang in there. Again, stay there until your until your child goes to college and be there. That's the best thing you can do for your kid is to stay in this marriage until they leave the house and then get a divorce. These are the kind of things that have been spread for years and years and years,
Oh, man.
which is all wrong. All wrong.
Okay.
Right? All wrong reasons for staying in a marriage, even though it is a dysfunctional marriage and not a healthy one, not an environment where you want to raise your child. But that's not what you're trained to do as a kid, as a minority, because I have that association as well, and just all the misinformation. So that's really what kind of set me on this path of really seeking out information about what is the right thing, the ideal thing, I would say. Now, there's a lot of right and wrong. I don't want to even go there, but just like, what's ideal for success? Well, it's definitely not being in a marriage where there's, it's dysfunctional. That's very unhealthy.
Are you saying to me right now that your marriage that lasted for 17 years potentially should have only lasted for a fraction of that, if it was fully up to you?
Correct. Not even a third of it. Really.
Really?
It was, yeah.
So you're saying there's enough forces outside of your relationship that added 66% more time in a relationship that never should have been.
Absolutely.
That's
because the biggest outside information that we internalize is what's in our belief system that's been dictated to us. And we're accepting this belief because that's you've heard this over and over and over again, this idea of this is what you have to do. Da, 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 da. Now it's in your mind and that's what you believe, even though it's not really who you are or what you truly believe. One of the things that I do as a coach is remove all the external influences out of people's minds and bring out the real person and what they really want in order for them to have a successful life. Because if you're living your life based on other people's expectations, you're not going to be happy.
Yeah, but aren't we all in a way kind of like fulfilling some type of cultural / social expectation of us? Because the standard of what we look for in our relationships, as well as, the people that we bring around us romantically, isn't that often influenced by these external forces? I don't think there's a pure person that's going off of just sheer instincts in their romantic lives. There's got to be some type of like restriction that is guided by external forces. There has to be for everyone. No?
I think that if you have very clear core values that are yours, irrespective of where they're coming from. So your core values could be that, yes, religion or faith is very important to you intrinsically, like you really believe this. It's not because you were influenced by it. And there are people who are very religious, for example, or have a certain faith that has nothing to do with what their family believes in.
Okay.
But that they've chosen this path and now this is important to them as part of their core values. Or it could be that like whatever your financial outlook is that is specific to you, that has nothing to do if you grew up poor and now you have a lot of money, maybe you have a different type of value that you've discovered about yourself that is intrinsic to you, that is truly who you are and at the core of who you are without the influence and all that. I think that people can be authentically who they are. And it takes a lot of effort to get to the bottom of what that really is, because we're so influenced, to your point, by outside sources, whether it's religion, whether it's your parents,
even religion, friends, even religion, or like parents, or anything that you might consider intrinsic, that had to have been shaped by something, right? And with some of the things that we're going to be talking about on this conversation when it comes to like imposters in this field, I think there's a lot of people who are influencing people online about what relationships need to be like, how you're supposed to approach them and so on and so forth. Why do you think there are so many imposters, and how do you identify an imposter online who might be experiencing imposter syndrome, or they're legitimate imposters in the space of like giving people advice?
Okay, so there's a lot of people that are going into this space because and particularly targeting women, right? And that's the sad part, because women are more likely to sign up for these types of services, more likely than men. It's, I would say there's a lesser percentage of men who are willing to go to a dating coach or who are willing to admit that they need help or, whatever the case may be. For whatever reason, the women are more open to this. And so you have a lot of people that are going into it simply for the money or because they have this megalomaniac kind of, mentality. But when they really look at themselves, they don't have a healthy relationship. They've never had one, so they don't even know how to be in one. A lot of people pay to play. They get these awards that are posted online.
What awards?
Awards about like the number one dating coach or the number one matchmaker.
Who's giving them these awards?
There's different organizations, and they post them online, and they become a thing, and people post these on their website. But the reality is, and I've been offered those before, and I've never paid to play. And so what happens is you pay a certain dollar amount, and then just based on that fee alone, that's enough for you to win this award. And then now you can have bragging rights about something. And I don't have a lot of respect for that.
Wow.
Because I'm very, integrity is one of my core values. So I have a hard time with things like that, where you're claiming something just because you paid for it. No,
So you're saying there are people in the space of giving coaching advice who are also like, aiding people in how to find love as well as how to be in relationships. And you're saying like a lot of them are manipulating people, specifically women?
Yes.
Are targeted
the sad
for this?
part, yes. The
That's
sad part
crazy.
is that most of the misinformation is mostly targeted at women.
But why women though?
Because they're more likely to sign up for these services and willing to pay. And because they're seeking that information to be successful in a relationship. They want to get married, or they want a committed relationship. And they are willing to pay for this more so than men. And so that is now a known thing. And so you have people going into this space to make money, not so much to really help people.
So you're saying you're saying women inherently are more susceptible to being manipulated in this space because they're the ones that are more motivated to gain the most out of like relationships?
Yeah, just like women are the ones who are there are more women getting college degrees. There are more women getting higher education.
Okay.
There are more women signing up for relationship advice. And it's great. I mean, kudos to them that they're willing to seek out the information. The key is to vet out somehow the imposters that are out there sharing information that is purely anecdotal, like stuff that they just kind of make up, or that they have their own experience and they've decided that this is how it is. You can't give people information like that unless you're specifically saying, look, this was my experience.
Yeah.
And this is what happened. And this is what I learned from it. And so now I'm sharing that with you. But that's not the approach,
really?
Right? It's an approach of like, this is how it is because I went through it, and there's no real barrier to entry. In other words, anybody can just say, hey, I'm a coach, and declare themselves a coach.
Okay.
And they're out there doing it. And people like me are like, oh my gosh, like I spent hours and hours of getting knowledge, learning, from the best. Okay. Reading books, writing myself. I write articles every month for a magazine. I'm constantly researching. I'm interviewing people. I'm working with clients. And the most important thing that I do is anytime I learn something new, I incorporate it into my relationship to see if it works.
Really? So you do social experiments on your own relationship. So your husband's like, why are you doing that today? That's weird. I like it, but that's random. Who are you? There's a stranger in my house. I don't know if you know that song. That's old school.
Oh, yes, I do. But,
I'm telling you,
it's not even like that. It's not even like that, right? It's more of when you know better, you do better. Right? So if I learn something and it resonates and I'm like, okay, this is a proven thing. It makes sense. I'm going to incorporate this. I don't have to tell my husband about it, because that's the thing. When you are being coached, the person that you're with doesn't have to be coached to get the results, right?
Okay.
Because for every action, there's a reaction.
Sure.
So when you're behaving a certain way, you're going to then, you're going to have someone react to that behavior. And if it's positive, it's going to be positive. If it's negative, it's going to be negative. So it's not always one. Go ahead.
So no, I just want to kind of understand, like, you're stating all these things, and these are things that are attributed to how you move in the space, right? So I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're a credible source, just for the sake of this conversation, right? But if someone was to identify, like, for the women out there, right, who are reading these magazines, who are, hiring these coaches or listening to these things online and watching these examples of people showing them how to be in relationships and how to find love, what are some telltale signs, right, that you are paying attention to the wrong advice, or you are interacting with someone that is a false representative of an expert in the space of love? How do you tell that? How does a woman identify that? And I'm only saying women because you've said that women are the ones more likely to fall for this crap, for lack of better words. How do you identify that as a woman?
Okay. So, all right. So this is going to be, I'm treading lightly on this subject because I don't want to offend people that I know that are out there who actually have good information. Here's an example. A man can never think like a woman.
What? Are you sure about that? I remember last Tuesday, I felt a little.
Now, I want to qualify that because, okay, I'm saying that this is just, I'm going to say, because I'm a science-based person, I'm going to say this is my opinion.
Yeah.
The reason I'm saying that as an opinion is because we have now all this stuff going on with transgender and cis male, cis female. So I'm not an expert in that area, and I'm very quick to say, look, I don't understand that fully, and I would like to learn more.
Right.
But what I feel is that men cannot think like women. Women cannot think like men. So if a man wants to coach me about, hey, this is how men think, and then therefore you can do something with that information, great. But you can't tell me how to think and how to be, because you're not a female.
So you say, okay, so you're saying
that's right off the bat. Like, don't go to a plumber for electrical advice is all I'm saying.
I feel you, right? And this gets a little tricky, right? Very tricky, because basically what you're saying is a man should not be giving a woman relationship advice.
Not really. No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, so
because a man can approach it from a male perspective.
Got it. Okay.
But they cannot approach it as if they're a woman. Like,
who's doing that, and what does that even look like?
Most men don't even understand what women think half the time. Most men don't really. I mean, come on. Like, show me a guy who fully understands a woman that can tell women how to be.
Let me stop. Okay, I want to make sure I'm clear on this, right? In what way is a woman being told by a man how to be a woman? Even though it sounds rhetorical, but I want to make sure we verbalize it, because, like, I've seen, men as coaches, women as coaches, and they have experiences that benefit both sexes in a lot of ways. And then sometimes it's good to hear it from the other side and so on and so forth. But in what way is someone telling someone how to be that where they don't understand how to be that themselves? Like, what does that look like? Give me an example. Like walk me through a dialogue.
Okay. Let me think of a quick example. So you and I met on Clubhouse, right? Sure. There's a lot of misinformation on Clubhouse. And a lot of times I go into these rooms where the men are telling the women, this is how you need to be, this is how you need to act, or that's masculine energy, you're being too masculine, all this stuff that to me is a lot of times inaccurate with a lot of what I hear.
Okay.
And what it does is you have people who are already unsure of themselves, who feel they're not having success, and now they're listening to this information and wronging themselves, and they're just trying to figure things out so that they can be successful in love. Right. And a lot of this masculine, feminine energy stuff is like a whole other conversation that I'm not going to get into, because I don't know any of the signs of the masculine, feminine energy per se. But
well, a lot of it is discussed in a spiritual way, right? So it gets very ambiguous in how it's explained, like, your energy, your spirit, and so on and so forth. So a lot of people are like, my spirit, no, I need to correct my spirit. You know what I mean? So, and it's hard to really put a like data on it, because it gets very ambiguous. So I understand how that can be used. Yeah.
So that's one of those things. I have a hard time with, unless you are a very religious person. And you want to live a certain lifestyle based on whatever religion that you're in. Right. I always find these rooms where they're like, oh, you need to submit and you need to follow and he needs to lead, and all that stuff is just, I can't.
So, but are you saying when things are being discussed from the angle of religion, as well as stuff being discussed when we're talking about energies of how one person should be, you're saying those are the red flags that they might be getting advice from the wrong person?
Yeah, well, a lot of times those, oh, you need to submit and this, that, and the other is usually a panel of men telling women what they need to do. Okay. You know what? I almost want to say to their own detriment, really, because if you in my opinion, if you have a relationship where there's a partnership and two people are contributing, this whole submission thing goes out the window, but that's a whole other subject. That's more on the science, but it's usually the men on a panel telling women, this is what you need to do.
So why do you think women listen to that? If it's because you make it sound like such an obvious disconnect, right? So why do you think women listen to that if you're declaring it as evidence of like inaccuracies?
I think that because cis women who are straight, who want to be with men, are feeling lost. They feel like they need to go seek the answer from the men. And you can get information from men about that particular man and how he likes things. Sure. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be a great coach for you. Right. That person's going to show you the way. I would think, as Tony Robbins says, right? Find someone who's done it, who is similar to you, and do what they did, or kind of like follow what they're, follow their advice, where they can actually understand you and what, how a woman think and the trials and tribulations that women go through. Right. And that's not even talking about the science of it, because I tend to focus more on the science of it. Right. We're gonna get into that. We're gonna get into that, but go ahead. This is more of like opinion, me stating my opinions about how does this make any sense. Do you ever find women giving men advice the wrong way? Absolutely. Okay, but give me an example. It's rare because usually the women aren't talking to the men. So everyone's talking to the women. Everyone's talking to the women. The men are talking to the women. The ladies are talking to the women, and they're all feeding women misinformation. Not all, but yes, a good majority. All the misinformation is being directed at the women. I believe so, yes. And it's partially because they're the ones most receptive to it. Is that what you're saying? Correct. Yes. So does that mean myself and any other man in this world are inherently screwed at what we're going to encounter in the world of single women? Not necessarily screwed, but what you will find are a lot of chameleons that are really trying to shape themselves in a way to connect with a man out of thinking that is the necessary thing to do, rather than being more authentic and vulnerable in that authenticity. And because it's like you're trying to mold people to be a certain way that is not intrinsically who they are.
Got it.
And so you're going to find a lot of people who are not being truthful, right? For a period of time, because you can only sustain that for so long before the real person comes out. And it's just creating a lot of confusion and frustration for women, really.
So what's your solution to that? Because at the end of the day, if someone comes up to you and they want coaching, in a lot of ways, you're kind of helping them shape and mold themselves. I would hope to be the best version of themselves, but it might not feel natural to them at first, right? So,
yes and no, because what I do is try to hone in on who they truly are. And we spend a fair amount of time removing a lot of the misinformation and the thinking that they've imposed on themselves from outside sources, and try to get to like who they truly are. So that's a fair amount of the transformation in my coaching. And then beyond that is explaining the signs of relationships, the skills that are needed. And just like when you know something, I mean, the only way to encapsulate that is when you know better, you do better. So if you know that this is how things are, then you don't have expectations, which is like a curse word to me. Like expectations are resentment in the making. I say that all the time, because when you expect something, it may or may not be based on really anything. So rather than having conversations, negotiating situations with whoever it is that you're dealing with, instead you have this idea in your head of what you expect. And then when it doesn't happen, you're disappointed. And that there's no value in that.
So what's the most common expectation, right? The most common expectation your clients or students, however you want to title them, have that are completely left field from reality?
Okay, so I'll give you two. One is that they're going to know the right match or their ideal partner when they see him, when they meet him, all of a sudden.
What, you mean you don't believe in love at first sight? That's crazy.
Definitely no. I do not believe in love at first sight. Absolutely not.
Okay.
No.
Not even if you're at a rave and you're like high on a bunch of stuff, the music's just blasting, the body sweat is real. No? Okay. Well,
no.
I tried. Okay. Sorry, ladies.
No, and I'll tell you what, I interview every time I see a couple that's been together for 40 years, I always say, hey, how did you guys meet? And did you hit it off right away? And I can't tell you how many times one or the other will say, no, I didn't even like my spouse.
I've heard that. I
wasn't even. Okay. So this whole love at first sight to me.
Who usually says that I didn't really like the spouse? Is it the woman?
A lot of women say, yeah.
I've never heard a guy who's been with a woman for quite some time and say, I didn't even like her. To me, that's unheard of. Usually it's like the guy who's doing the pursuit and she might have to give the token resistance and be convinced. So I'll never hear a guy say, I didn't even like her at first, but I decided to be with her for 40 years. Dudes don't do that, in my opinion.
Right.
Okay, so...
Well, I mean, I get that because generally speaking, men are the ones who are the chasers, right? Generally speaking, they're going after someone, and then it's up to the woman to be the receptor and allow or disallow. So at first, someone might resist and think, well, this is not the right person for me. But once they get to know that person and they peel back the layers and they allow enough time to figure that out, and they'll be like, oh, wow, okay, this is a surprise.
Okay.
I actually do like this person. So I think it's going to be more common that a woman would say that. That's a big one.
So the big one is, just so it's clear, you're never going to know off rip who's right for you. You're always going to have to peel back the layers, right? That's the expectation.
I don't like absolutes, so I wouldn't say never, because you might meet someone who you might fall in love with, love at first sight, and everything might work out. So I never say never.
Did you like, your current husband, did you like him from the moment you met him? Did you say, this is my guy? Or were you kind of like, I don't even know if I want to be around this person?
No, I mean, well, we met.
First of all, you
like
stutter. You stutter.
No, I definitely did not want to meet him. He sent me 4 messages on Match.com before I actually responded.
Yeah, but that's not okay. That's different because you're talking about a picture and some words. I'm talking about when you met this person in person, like the natural way, right?
Yes.
Like, what were you engaged enough at the beginning? Like, I'm talking within the first 5 minutes to an hour to say, this is my person. I really vibe with this person.
We totally vibed, I have to say.
All
We
right.
totally vibed, but I did not know that he was my person on that first meeting. But I did know that we had a lot of core values that were common, and we came from such different backgrounds, which was very interesting. So, of course, I was a little skeptical.
Yeah.
And that skepticism actually helped me to be a better vetter, which is something people don't normally do, right? So I was really more inquisitive about, is this going to be a good match for me since we're coming from different places and different everything, and it turned out that it was, that we had a lot in common.
Okay, so that's one misconception, which is you're going to know when you know. That's a misconception, right? So what's another one?
That if he's right for you, he's going to know what to do, what to say, and how to be. Like, it's like this, he's just going to figure me out. He's just going to know me. Like,
okay. So what do you tell to the ladies? Like, I'm assuming you're referring to the ladies. So what do you tell to the ladies who are discontent with a guy not doing the right things at first? Because I'll be honest with you, that's a tricky one because oftentimes there's a lot of conversations about red flags, right? There's a lot of conversations about like, getting a vibe, a good vibe, right? Of who you're with. So how do you tell someone who's initially turned off to be patient with someone that they're turned off from and not waste their time? Like, how do you?
okay, well, I'm not saying necessarily turned off,
Okay.
right? But so, for example, depending on who you are, because it's going to be different for everyone.
Okay.
If you're someone who is very sophisticated, who runs in certain circles where maybe you're interacting and, with certain circles where there needs to be certain manners, etc.
Right.
Chances are, if you meet someone and let's say you meet and you're having dinner and the person doesn't have good manners, that could be a deal breaker for someone.
Okay.
Right? Because if you're let's say you're 50 years old or 40 something years old, and this person still doesn't have good manners, didn't figure it out in their lifetime, that might say a lot of different things about that person. So that might be a turnoff for one person. For another person, it could be like, well, whatever.
Right.
He's got this and this and this, and he's got all these great qualities. Who cares? I'll teach him how to do that.
Okay.
So it's going to vary. That's why I always say that it's all about really understanding who you are and where you are in life and what are your goals, what are your needs, and who makes a good match for that to mesh well with you.
Okay.
And really knowing that.
Okay.
So it's not going to be the same for everybody. Like when I coach, it's very individualized. I can't coach for the masses. I mean, I do have like programs that people can take, but it's still doing inner work and figuring themselves out individually.
Yeah, but okay, so I'm still not understanding. Like you said, the person that might be right for you might not be doing the right things automatically, right? So
well, guessing. Not guessing. What I'm saying is this. Well, if he loves me, he would know that I want XYZ. Well, no, because have you expressed that you want XYZ?
Okay.
Have you had conversations about this idea that the right person automatically will know is convoluted, but that happens a lot. And you'd be surprised. It happens with highly educated women.
Why do you think that is? Because that's like prescribing telepathy, like in conversation. Like, why do you think that is? Because I've experienced that myself, right? Where like I'll be engaged with someone who is not really that communicative, or at least they don't communicate well a lot of what they need, but expect it to be delivered. So why do you think that happens so many times? Right?
Well, you hit the nail on the head, because they're not communicative, because we haven't been taught to communicate our needs.
By
And
whom?
a lot of
By
times-
whom? Who's supposed to be teaching you that?
Well, ideally, you'd want your parents to teach that, but unfortunately, most of the misinformation about relationship comes from our parents or those people who raise us.
So you're saying parents are the biggest imposters in the love space?
Well, I wouldn't
Sorry,
say
Mom.
imposters. I
suck
wouldn't
at
say
this.
imposters, but I mean, look, I'll use myself as an example. I was raised by a single mom
Okay.
who was in her day, she was like considered an old maid. By the time she got married, she was 30 something.
Okay.
She was going to be a nun and met my dad.
Wait, time out.
And ended
Hold up. Wait a minute. How do you go from I'm going to be a nun to now I'm popping out babies with a guy?
She was on the path. She was a college professor. She was highly educated. She was on the path to becoming a nun, and then steered away from that and decided, you know what? She met my dad, who they call Papi, if that's not a clue, okay? Who was
I heard of the term poppy.
Yeah, he was a player, my dad.
Okay.
And so my mom fell for him. They ended up getting married.
So don't take relationship advice from Poppy.
No, my dad.
No?
Yeah, he was quite the player.
Okay.
And so, like at that point, what does my mom know about relationships?
Got it.
Nothing, because she was focused on her education. She's a smart woman. She gets married to a player. He cheats on her the entire relationship.
Oh man.
He ends up leaving. Now I'm being raised by this woman, bless her heart, who I absolutely love and adore. And she's raising myself and my sister, 2 daughters.
Got it.
So what do we see? What can she teach us really about relationships? So she decides she's going to go on the path of, well, you have to be independent. You can't trust men.
Here we go.
You have to have this. You know what I'm saying? So this is all with the intent of bolstering us and keeping us safe and helping us be independent women. But the approach and the messaging is completely off.
Yeah.
In the delivery.
Yeah.
This happens all the time.
Oh,
right?
I know.
So
I know.
Now what am I? I grow up this independent woman, career driven, successful, attracting someone who maybe doesn't even want to hold on a job. Right? Because if you're in charge and you're the one making the money and you're doing this and that, what are you going to attract? Someone who
needs that security.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, I can go down that whole rabbit hole. So how do you unlearn all of this? That's what I'm talking about. Unlearning all of the nonsense and misinformation, and then bringing out the real you into who you are and going through life as the real you, and not all this stuff that you heard from your parents, from society, from school, from other people, from people who don't know what the hell they're talking about.
AKA imposters in the world. Wait, so you said 2 things, right? So you said that people often have the misconception that when you know, like when you see the person, you know that's the person that's going to be for you. That's the falsehood number 1, right? And falsehood number 2 is like the person who's your person is going to automatically know what to do with you in the relationship. And that's a misconception, right? So I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm just going to go out on a limb. I feel like you're talking about women. Because these are things that I don't necessarily hear from a lot of like the male population that I converse with. Not that could just be my population, but what are some misconceptions that men have? Because they got to have some misconceptions too, right? Because ladies are not the only ones messing this up, for lack of a better word.
Oh, without a doubt, there's no question.
Tell me
about
how
that.
we suck. Tell me why we're doing a horrible job as men.
2
misconceptions. I need 2.
2. Okay. So focusing on just the physical is sometimes really detrimental to men, because while yes, you need to be attracted to someone, just being attracted is not enough to sustain the relationship. At some point, that person's personality and behavior, if it's not the right match for you, is not, you're going to walk away from that.
That's a tough one. I'm cringing.
I'm not saying you don't, I'm not saying that you pick people that you're not attracted to.
Okay.
The attraction is not enough.
No, and that's okay. That's fair. And I think that's a fair statement, because a lot of people will say to men, right, which is, I think, the bad advice, in my opinion, that they'll say to men is, looks, you don't need to worry about looks. Looks are going to fade, this, that, and the third. But like, a man is hunting what he's attracted to, right? When you don't have anything else to put in front of you, especially in today's world, where you're not getting everybody's accolades up front. And even if you did, you need some triggering impulse to keep you attentive, at least in the beginning, before you know everything else, right? So
fair enough, yeah.
But you're saying that the misconception is there's too strong of an emphasis on the physical, right?
Absolutely.
How do you even fight that if it's like a natural impulse? Like, should you fight that? Is that, you said at the beginning of this conversation that, like, oftentimes people are misrepresenting themselves and fighting their own natural impulses and natural selves. Isn't that a form of natural self for a guy who's putting a lot of emphasis on, I guess, looks, vanity, and so on and so forth? Or
the one way to fight that, you can be totally smitten with someone and find them beautiful and all of that. But what's important is to have very important conversations to get to know someone and not necessarily jump into bed with someone. Now, I know, do your sound effects, because I know men are like, oh my God.
First of all, okay, I'm not making that face because it's like, oh, you saying I shouldn't sleep with someone? Like, it's not even that. It's like, okay, so I've had this argument, right? I've had this argument with a lot of people for some reason, right? Where a lot of, like, and this kind of goes along with misconceptions, right? A lot of ladies are like, if you make him wait, then he'll value you more, right? And then they go around the table with, how long should you make him wait? What is the timeline of gaining value in a relationship so the person can appreciate you beyond just sex and so on and so forth, right? And I have this saying, like, it's not really a saying, it's just, in my opinion, is my fact and truth, is like, a guy can wait 10 years, right? If he's persistent, he'll wait 10 years just so he can get in bed with you, if that's all you have to offer in a relationship to him, right? And then just as easily dispose of you physically or mentally after the fact, right? So I often say to people, it's not a matter of if you wait or how long you wait. You should be paying more attention to, what are you doing while you're waiting?
Exactly.
Okay. So the whole, get to bed with the person too soon, this, that, and the third, that's all well and good, but I don't think there's enough emphasis on what you're doing in the process of whether you're waiting for a day or a year, right? Or anywhere in between. What are you exhibiting all in between, during, or even after that is of any value to anyone long term, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead. I didn't mean to like.
Completely agree. And I'm not of the mindset that, there's nothing wrong with sex. The challenge
I just want to make sure everybody heard Arlene said there's nothing wrong with sex. So giddy up.
Sex is great. It's great and enjoy it and all that stuff.
I heard rumors.
Especially if you're enjoying it, because I've heard, that's a whole other.
Wait a minute.
That's not my area of expertise, but there are a lot of people who have sex and don't even enjoy it.
Okay. Oof.
But
that's a different.
Okay.
Oof. Okay.
Yeah. We need to bring in a different speaker for that topic. But
would that exist on this podcast? Trust me.
Yes, absolutely. It's the quality of the time that you're spending with someone. If you're looking for long term, if you're not looking for long term and you're two consenting adults and you just want to get laid, go right ahead. But you do run the risk of one person getting hurt in that process who maybe falls more for the other than the other and thinks that they're in this, friends with benefit situation and really develops, emotions for that. And a lot of times, unfortunately, it's the women who do that because sex creates certain hormones in our bodies that are love hormones. And so you do become attached to someone. And so why not take the time to really get to know someone? And this is what I want to say. When I talk to men about how do you know this is the woman for you? Why did you choose her to get married? This is what I hear, and I'm going to paraphrase it in so many words. She's easy to be with.
Okay.
And what do they mean? Because I always say, so she's easy to be with. Well, what does that mean? She can communicate her needs without going bonkers to do it. She can explain things to me and tell me what she needs. And I can, I want to please her, but I can't please her if I don't know what pleases her. And I can't make the shit up. I can't read her mind.
Right.
So a woman who's easy to be with is someone who can communicate her needs and unapologetically without being rude about it, without being off-putting, but just being able to finessing your communication to get that point across. And then you're like, oh, ding. Okay, now I know what she likes. Okay, cool. Or, and I'm not talking sexually, but even sexually, I'm talking in every sense of the word, everything. They tell you don't sweat the small stuff. That's not accurate information. You should sweat the small stuff because it's the small stuff that adds up and creates bigger problems.
Yeah.
The bigger issues are almost easier to resolve, but the small stuff will grate on you.
Oftentimes the bigger issues grew from a smaller thing that you probably could have prevented before. But your main or your first misconception identified through what men are experiencing or what they're expecting is focusing too much on the physical, right? What's the second one?
Not vetting someone. Also, if you're looking for a long-term relationship, not spending the time to actually get to know this person and finding out what they're all about. What's their core value? That goes for both parties. Really, if two people actually spend time with each other to get to know each other, then you can decide, this is the person for me or not. Whereas most of the time that doesn't happen. Now, in relationships, a lot of what I find that is challenging for men is that they want to fix it. They're problem solvers. And sometimes women are not looking for that kind of support.
Right.
And if a woman doesn't tell you, hey, I just want you to hear me out. I don't really need you to fix it, because the men go into fixing mode because that's one of the intrinsic differences between men and women.
Yeah.
And sometimes women just need to talk. I just need to talk this out and I need you to hear me without trying to fix it.
Are there really men that are, it's kind of an unfair question because I can't necessarily expect that my frame of mind is a common one, but I also feel as though this conversation has happened ad nauseum all over, where it's a well-known fact that there are a lot of women who like to vent. It's not a mystery, right?
Yeah.
So are there really men out there in large volumes, at the very least, that don't know that the venting is the therapy, the venting is the goal in a conversation, where you just shut the hell up and just let her spew out whatever's bothering her? Like, is that really like still a mystery?
I'm not sure if it's a mystery or if people are just, what's the word I want to say? I just think that because there's like an automatic response, like if you don't take that pause and say, hey, I hear you. Do you want me to just listen? Because you got to find that out too, because the other part of it is if somebody really wants your advice on something and you're just kind of nodding and whatever, then they're like, okay, did you hear what I just said? So it's kind of a dance. It's always a dance. And the dance could be done much easier if two people are communicating properly, because then I can preface something by, hey, I need to vent. Like, I just had the craziest day and you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I can say that to you. And then you're like, okay, got it. Keep my mouth shut. Even if you're going in your brain, well, I could solve that like this and I could solve that like that. But you're just going to not even share that.
Yeah.
Right. But yes, no, that happens all the time in so many relationships and so many people that just don't understand that.
So what it sounds like to me is there's like a multitude of ways people get the wrong information, right? We talked about how, obviously coaches who are falsifying their position. There are parents who are not well equipped, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the imposters that exist outside of those specific individuals, but just socially, that are misrepresenting what relationships are supposed to be like?
Okay.
You chuckled a little bit.
What's that?
You chuckled a little bit. You're like,
well, okay. I'm a Catholic. I was raised a Catholic anyway. I don't consider myself a Catholic.
Okay.
I find it pretty challenging if I'm having an issue in my relationship, to go to a priest for advice.
Oh, we going
to me, that
there.
Doesn't make any sense.
Oh, no. We're getting canceled.
I know. But I know. I can go to a priest for religious advice. I can go to a priest to help me understand the Bible. Like I said, I'm not going to go to a plumber for help with electrical issues. To me, from a logical standpoint, it doesn't make sense.
What about the people who aren't necessarily like a priest, but they come from a very religious foundation, and when they are giving people advice on relationships, they use religion as a baseline for how you should move in a relationship? Like they'll say, you should do this as a woman because God said that such and such. You should do this as a man because God won't allow such and such and such into their kingdom. If covet this, so on and so forth. Now, I have no disrespect towards anybody's like beliefs or ideologies, but in a lot of ways, there are a lot of people who have religion as a foundation of their morals that guide them in relationships. So are you saying that the people who use that, whether it's through their priests or through their peers who are also religious, are you saying the people who use that are getting the wrong information or not getting the best information?
No, not necessarily. I mean, if you're part of a community where you are, religiously based and you want to seek out information from someone who is equally yoked, then go right ahead. There may or may not be some information that they share with you that's inaccurate based on the science, but that you always run the risk. However, I think that if religiously you need that type of foundation for the advice that you're getting, absolutely. If that is, if this is what you really want and need, I don't discount that.
Okay.
And also if religion is a huge part of who you are, and you need a partner who is also, as I said, equally yoked, which is how it presents it in the Bible, then yeah, absolutely. You really should seek that, because it will potentially be challenging. If you want to go to church, let's say every Sunday, you want your spouse there, you want to raise your kids in a certain religion. If that person is not on board with that, ultimately that's going to be a potential deal breaker in your relationship. So I'm all for that. But that said, it's different to have a couple, let's say 2 people who are married successfully, giving relationship advice versus going, like I said, to a priest who's never been married, who's never been in a relationship.
Have you gotten
advice? To me,
advice?
that's very different.
Have you been given advice from a religious person?
Yeah, my mom was one of these mothers that if any religious person knocked on our door growing up in the 70s and 80s, she'd be like, "Oh, come on in, talk to my daughters."
Talk to my daughters.
It was well, and she would sit there too, but she was totally on board with it. So I've been around every religion you could possibly think of.
Wait, who are these people coming in the house? They're like Jehovah's Witnesses? Like, what are we talking about?
Okay, well, yeah, so you're really, really young, but back in the day, back in the day, you'd have Mormons knocking on your door, showing up at your doorstep and saying, "Hey, we'd like to talk to you a little bit." Seventh-day Adventists, Jehovah's Witness, you name it. That was a thing back in the day. I don't think people do that so much anymore.
Okay.
But remember, I was born in the 60s. So I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. And yeah, people literally...
You were born in the 60s?
Yes.
No. I got to do math now. I need my abacus. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a very common thing. And because my mom's foundation is very religious, she then was always it was a respectful thing. Yeah, they're knocking on.
I'm still bugging. You were born in the 60s?
1966.
Listen, I hope your husband's not around. You're gorgeous.
Thank you.
Make sure he's not. Don't send him my address. All right. So when you say, it's just, I remember you told me how old you were before, and then I put the map. I'm just like, when I think of someone born in the 60s, I don't picture you. That's all. You know what I mean?
Thank you. It's all genetics. If you saw my mom, she's 89. She doesn't look a day over 60. I mean,
she's single?
Yeah. She looks really young. So thanks to her.
Right on. Okay, but go ahead. So you had these people coming to the house back in.
Yeah. So I was always getting that religious thing in my ear of every religion you could possibly think of. And then I sought out my own stuff too. I looked into Buddhism. I looked into Judaism. You name it. I've always, I like to learn. Okay. So I go through my phases of learning things.
Okay.
And when I was in my, theology phase of learning about religions, I did that. But yeah.
So all these things are these imposters of relationships and love, right? And you're in the space yourself. Has there ever been a moment in your career where you felt like you were an imposter?
So when I first got into this industry, I was exclusively a matchmaker.
Okay.
I was already seeking information and trying to figure this stuff out for myself. At that point, I never called myself a dating coach because I was in that learning phase and I wanted to have a happy and healthy relationship myself.
Okay.
So I had come out off of a marriage of 17 years. Then I was single for quite a while and seeking this knowledge, met my husband. And after being with him and successfully navigating a healthy relationship,
right?
Aside from getting accreditations and things like that, then I felt, and this is the standard that I hold myself to. I don't think that everyone has to have a relationship and all this stuff, but this is the standard that I held myself to. Sure. I can't teach people something that I haven't accomplished myself. It's just not in me, right? So I
that's
climbed
shots
that
fired
mountain.
to those who aren't on the same page. That's shots fired. I'm just saying. If you've never been in a long-term or successful relationship or aren't currently in one, you can't get in the ring with Arlene. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I like I said, I hold myself to that standard. I don't necessarily think that that's for everyone. But because of who I am and because of the core values that I've chosen to live by,
Sure.
That is a very important thing to me.
I respect it.
I won't give you, I won't be a personal trainer if I'm out of shape.
Okay. So let me ask you something. So give me an example of like a personal experience, because, your standard is you have to have experienced it to really be an expert in it, right? So give me an example of like a personal experience that you've had that helped you give someone else advice.
A personal experience that has helped me to give somebody else advice.
Yes.
In anything? You're talking about dating and relationships, or just
in relationship. I mean, your profession is in the love space, right? So giving somebody advice in the love space, like something you experienced in your past marriage, your current marriage, or just in relationships as a whole that you've experienced that said, you know what, I can bring this information to other people so they can benefit from it.
Well, okay. This is a tough one because I always speak in general terms because there's always the exception.
Sure.
I don't want people. When I met my ex, I was 19 years old. My brain wasn't even fully developed. I had a child by the time I was 22. What the science shows is that you're not really equipped to be making those life decisions at that age.
Right.
That's not to say that there aren't any high school sweethearts who meet and date all those years and get married and stay together.
Yeah.
Yeah, they exist. But the majority, so this is where the science of your brain not being fully developed, so you don't even know who you really are.
Sure.
How could you even tell somebody, this is how I need to be treated, blah, blah, blah. You don't even know.
Yeah.
That's one. Secondly, what the research shows is that most couples that start that early in life are likely not to succeed. Now, I don't want people sending bombs to me or sending comments because, I know that there are some that do, right?
Okay.
There are some high school sweethearts that actually work out and stay together for the long term.
Yeah.
But what the research shows is in the majority, that is not the case.
So if you're 19 to 25 or 25 and below, break up today, Arlene says. That's what you said. No. You should break up with whoever you're with. I understand she is the mother of your child. I understand that he is the father of your child. I understand you guys probably have a mortgage. You got to end it today. Trouble. You're married, end it. There's a divorce court that is $3.99. I saw the billboard. Take care of it today. Carry on.
No, so okay, you're getting me in trouble. But what I'm saying is before you even think about marriage, really spend the time figuring yourself out before you go there.
Okay.
Because you're likely making a decision that in the long term is not going to be an ideal choice for you.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. If you want to do it, go right ahead. But
just call me after.
In the majority, that's not a great choice.
So in your mind, given what you've learned, that would have been a decision you would have made differently, which is getting hitched up that early in your life, right? Because you don't think you were ready, and I assume maybe your past husband was not ready either, right?
Correct. Not only that, but I also thought that, well, he's got potential. There's some things
age old
I could probably help him work through. Or, I'm sure I could change that or this or that.
Uh-huh.
That's an experience that I know firsthand.
Okay.
That I've lived through.
Okay.
That you can't change people.
Got it.
You cannot change, control, or even manipulate people for the most part. They can allow themselves to be manipulated, but that's a choice that they're making.
Got it.
And they can change if they want to change.
Got it.
They could be influenced by you.
Yeah.
But you can't control other people. So when I was younger, I did not know that. You're 19 years old. You're like, oh, there's potentials, this and that. I see one or two things that are not great, but I'm sure I can help that person change.
Okay.
Meanwhile, that never changed. That never changes.
Okay.
And then now it's a deal breaker because now that I'm solid in who I am, I'm like, I'm not dealing with this anymore.
So you're out here telling people like, hey, if that person's trash today, dump him, girl. Dump him, sis. You can't change him.
Yeah, I mean, look, people can change and they can get better. But if you're relationship ready, if you're ready to have a long-term relationship with someone that you're seeking as a partner, for the long haul for marriage.
Okay.
You can't be dating potential. You have to choose someone who is at where you need them to be. And sometimes men, well, listen, sometimes men will self-select and say, you know what? I really want to be with this woman, but I'm not ready. I need to get my shit together. And then I'm going to pursue this.
The reason why I'm fighting this is
because you're young.
No, that's not, stop. That's not what it is. It's like, I take it a step further. It's like, don't date someone for, where you need them to be to match you right now. You need to date someone based on where you're headed. Right? Because at the end of the day, you might outgrow what you might like today. Right? So you need to have a better understanding of your trajectory in life, not just career and financially and education, but just as a person, like emotionally. And you need to be like educated about yourself enough to know what you're trying to mature intentionally towards. Right? And once you know,
more aspirational,
not just aspirational, but like, if you know that, okay, you might be someone who is like, I don't know, you might be someone who is super enthusiastic and you are a very social person. You like going to parties and doing this, that, and the third. And the person you're seeing likes that lifestyle as well. And then you guys fit. But you're also maturing into a person that's going to want something a little different, right? You're not going to be able to predict, but you're going to know that you're coaching yourself to be like, emotionally mature in a particular way. And you want to know if that person has that capacity. So when you get there, you can match with that person, right? And let's say if we are talking about finances or just education, if you're someone, you're educating yourself and you're trying to launch yourself in your career or, for the well-being of your children and so on and so forth, or if you want to have 2 or 3 kids and you want them to have a certain lifestyle, you have to ask yourself, okay, I'm enjoying myself with this person today, but do they have the capacity for what I'm going to grow into later? You need to ask yourself that if you are well aware of where you're headed. That's my personal mantra.
I do agree, but it's still in the present moment. So what you're saying, for example, is, does this person have ambition? Are they intellectually curious? Do they have life goals that are similar to mine?
Sure.
But you're still asking those in the present moment because you can't predict what's going to happen in the future, right?
Sure.
So it's making sure that is in common now so that you can build something together.
Sure.
I'm not saying that, I aspire to have a house someday, so the guy that I marry has to have a house. No. But does he want to aspire to have that? And does he have those types of goals? Does he have even a path to that? So I think we're kind of saying the same thing, but you can only live in the present moment.
Sure.
But still have the aspirations in the present moment that we have in common and still have the same core values that we have in common.
Yeah.
So I think we're kind of saying the same thing.
We're definitely saying the same thing. I think the angle that I was coming from was like, there are a lot of people who are in therapy, right? They're not exactly where they want to be, even emotionally, right? So you might still be attracting the person of where you're at emotionally today, right? And then as you change your mindset, as you get that therapy and you get that healing, you might have a different outlook on the person you picked that was good for you prior to the therapy that you were getting. Right. Yeah. So if you're conscious of where you want to be mentally, mature, secure, however, you need to be with someone that's either secure so you can meet that person there, or someone that's in the same trajectory So that's the angle. So yeah, you can only focus on right now, but I mean, you can only, actively participate in right now. But if you have like that forward thinking mindset, you need to be thinking that way with who you're selecting. I mean, that's just my opinion. I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy with a microphone.
No, but I agree with you. And you say a lot of things, over the months that I've known you. And I hear a lot of what you say. I think you're pretty on target. And I agree with you. So when I do matchmaking, I'm looking to match people based on their core values, based on their life goals.
Okay.
Because that's the part that you're talking about. What are your life goals?
Right.
I mean, look, if somebody is like, I'd like to someday have children. You don't have these children now. If you're going to get with someone who like, I don't know if I want kids, this and that could be a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't have the kids now, but that's what you're working towards. I want to have this. I want to have a family.
Okay.
I'd like to live, in the suburbs someday and have a beautiful, quiet life, this, that, and the other. And the other person's like, well, I could never see myself living in the suburbs, or I want to live on a farm. And you're like, I'm never going to be a farmer. Like, you got to take these things into account, even though they sound superficial and external. It says more about the person there. It says some of the inner stuff about the person, and you got to have these things in common. I'll give you an example of something. I would say I like to match people energetically. My ex-husband's idea, I should say my ex-late husband, because he passed away last year, unfortunately. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He had a heart condition and very young when he passed. But his idea of a vacation was to go out at night, party, drink, get up the next day late, and just mope around by a pool or something like that. And I'm like, look, that's cool. That is so not me.
Yeah.
It's never been me. I usually need a vacation from the vacation because I want to see everything. I want to go sightseeing. I want to hear the history. I want to run around and take it all in and maximize the experience. I'm a maximizer. His idea was like, no, this is enough for me. I'm fine right here.
Just get blitzed and passed out by the pool.
Yeah. So energetically, we were not aligned.
Yeah.
Whereas my husband and I are 100% in sync the same way. To me, that was a big thing. That was almost a deal breaker, to the point where I used to take vacations by myself after a while. I was like traveling by myself. Because he's like, nah, I don't really want to go. I have no interest in traveling over there. And I'm like, what? I want to go to every country. I want to see every corner of the world.
So why didn't you communicate that when you were 19? That was a joke.
Exactly. Who knew? Right.
So do you have any events or programs that you want to share with the people who are listening that might be able to help them?
Absolutely. So one of the things I'm doing right now is I have a new membership site for folks to join. And right now it's free. And it just has, I'm constantly adding more and more content that is based on the science and the research about dating and relationships.
Okay.
There's a lot of free content on there. And so I've been offering that because I'm only one person. So I want to share with as many people as possible.
Right.
The information that I've sought for myself and fortunately have passed on to my daughter, who's now happily married.
Right on.
I broke the cycle and I want seriously, I was a single mom. My mom was a single mom. So I think I broke the cycle, and God willing, everything's going to go well because I think she made a good choice in her spouse.
I mean, when your mom is a coach, when your mom's a relationship coach, your relationship better be amazing. Okay. Like she needs to be the mascot of your brand. Like seriously. Cause at the end of the day, it's like the very thing that you mentioned about how mothers and fathers are the ones that are the biggest imposters in how they coach their children into their upcoming relationships. I would hope that given your experience, as well as the knowledge that you gained through, education and so forth, that what you instilled in your daughter is going to be everlasting and positive in her life. So I really hope that, you know, and then you come back here 10 years and be like, look, I got 14 grandbabies. They're together doing all this craziness. Right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, put it this way. She has been my toughest client because I had to coach her without being coachy, without being obviously coaching her. It was very strategic. But
you were manipulative.
No, I was just imparting information in a strategic way so that it would, to plant those seeds. And I keep telling her, I want a testimonial from her. I said to her, Gabrielle, you need to give me a testimonial because you were my toughest client. She's like, Mom, I really did learn a lot from you. And she shifted her thinking, all of it, into a different format that has been a lot more successful. And that's how she really chose a great husband. And now I think she's going to do this with her kids. I'm super excited.
Do matchmakers match their kids?
I did not. However, she did a good job of choosing a good match for herself. But yeah, some matchmakers do, I'm sure.
Huh. Interesting. Anyway, listen, this conversation was, I scratched my head a lot because, you know, I just think about like some of the things that people are exposed to online. And I'm very, very happy to have been able to have this conversation with you and share with the world exactly what to look out for when you're online. Make sure you're not like dealing with these imposters that are giving you like all this false information. So do you have any like final words you want to say to everybody before we like sign out of here?
I just want to tell people to also follow your gut to some extent. Like you have some inner knowing that you can see and feel that the information that's coming is not accurate.
Okay.
There is a lot of science, right? I'm not just saying science, but like literally they're attaching people's brains to machines to see what parts of the brains are lighting up, et cetera. Okay. So there's a lot of science coming out about dating and relationships that in the past was not a priority, but there's stuff that's actually being funded by the U.S. government. Like
really,
one of my mentors, Dr. Terry Orbach, has been, she's been funded by the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, which is the U.S. She's been following couples for over 30 years, and it's an ongoing study. Harvard University has a study on happiness, but what it turns out that a lot of happiness has to do with the people that you choose into your life, the relationships that you make.
Wow.
So there is a lot of science, there is a lot of data, and it's not just anecdotal. Don't just take things at face value. And I hope that a lot of the coaches that are out there stop telling people that relationships are hard. Words have meaning. Words have power. Yeah. Words have energy. And every time that people tell you that relationships are hard, you then think relationships are hard. Then you believe that the relationships are hard. Then you tell yourself that, and then your actions sync up with that, and you self-sabotage and do a bunch of things that make the relationship hard. Just know that it takes effort. Effort is different. Doesn't have to be hard. It just takes energy and effort.
So like relationships are easy, but people make them hard.
Yeah, it's a lot of what we do is what makes relationships.
I'm going to coin that. I'm going to trademark that phrase. It's going to be a book bestseller. I see it coming. Go on. What? I was in a zone.
Yeah, so definitely know that relationships do take effort, right? But it's effort that you want to take, because when you find the right partner, you want it to work. You want to commit and recommit daily. Because you love the person, and it's easy to do. It really is. When you find that right partner, you want to do these things. You want to take the effort to have a harmonious relationship. I think nobody wants to be miserable.
No, God, no. I think the next time I have you on this show, I want to dig into the science, because you mentioned science a lot, and I think we're going to have a part 2 of this. And I'm going to pick your brain, because I'm a big nerd when it comes to the science of like social dynamics. And I feel like you're a wealth of knowledge. So before we wrap up, I want you to tell everybody where they can find you, like your social media, any handles that you might have that you want to share.
Yeah, so you can easily find me on all social media at Arlene Washburn, Arlene, Wash and Burn.
Washburn.
At Arlene Washburn on Instagram, on Facebook, Twitter, you name it.
Right on. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jeff Damisse. You can find me on IG at j.damisse. You can find me on Twitter. Same thing, j.damisse. And you can also find the Introspect Club at Introspect Club Introspect_club for IG and all the other handles and so on and so forth. Make sure you guys follow the club. Make sure you guys stay tuned for the next episode. And thank you, Arlene, for joining us in this conversation. Until next time.
Thank you. It was awesome.